The morning shift change at Meridian Station was always chaos, but Nessa Thorne had learned to navigate it like water flowing between stones, small, unnoticed, and easily overlooked. She pressed herself against the corridor wall as a group of Valorian traders thundered past, their 8-foot frames and crystalline armor glinting under the station's harsh lights. One of them nearly trampled her, his massive foot landing inches from her own. "Watch where you're going, child," he rumbled without looking down. "On 28, Nessa muttered to his retreating back. Though her voice was swallowed by the crowd's roar dot, her reflection in a passing viewport showed what everyone else saw. A woman barely reaching 4 feet 2 inches, with pale pearl-white skin that seemed almost translucent under station lighting, and wide violet eyes that her mother had once called windows to starlight. Among the towering species that dominated galactic trade, she looked like someone's daughter who'd wandered away from the civilian quarters. Nessa adjusted her Navy work uniform and checked her wrist display. Late again. Her supervisor, Toval, wouldn't accept another excuse. Even though the transit tubes never bothered to stop at the lower call buttons, positioned perfectly for species her size, but apparently invisible to the automated systems that responded to the larger species commands. First. The Systems Analysis Division occupied Meridian Station's lower east wing, where Nessa spent her days monitoring data streams that kept the station's environmental controls balanced across 50 different atmospheric requirements. It was meticulous work that required precision and patience, qualities her people, the Tellurians, were known for. What they weren't known for was being taken seriously. "Thorne!" Toval's voice boomed across the operations center before she'd even cleared the entrance. The Dendaran supervisor loomed over her desk, his bark-like skin rough with irritation, branch-like fingers tapping impatiently. "Third time this month. Care to explain? The transit tubes failed to see you?" Yes, the same excuse every diminutive species uses." His tone dripped with condescension. "Perhaps if you left earlier, accounting for your ... limitations." Nessa felt the familiar heat of shame crawl up her neck, but she kept her expression neutral. "It won't happen again, Supervisor. See that it doesn't. The temperature regulation in Sector 7 has been fluctuating." "Fix it." He thrust a data pad toward her, holding it just high enough that she had to reach awkwardly to grasp. It as she settled into her workstation modified with a booster seat. She'd had to request 3 times before receiving. Nessa pulled up the environmental readings. The fluctuations were odd, not following any normal pattern. The gravity plating in that sector seemed to be creating interference, though that shouldn't be possible. Gravity systems and atmospheric controls operated on completely separate networks. She lost herself in the work, fingers flying across holographic displays, chasing the anomaly through layers of code and sensor data. This was where she felt most capable, where her size didn't matter, where problems could be solved through cleverness rather than physical presence. "Nessa?" A voice interrupted her concentration. She looked up to find Mira, one of the few other Tellurians on the station, hovering nearby with a concerned expression. "You've been staring at that screen for 4 hours. Have you eaten?" "I'm close to finding the source of..." "You're always close to finding something." Mira's tone was gentle but firm. "Come on. The cafeteria will be less crowded now." The cafeteria was never truly less crowded, just differently crowded. During off-peak hours, it filled with cargo workers and ship crews rather than administrative staff. Nessa followed Mira through the maze of tables sized for species ranging from 4 to 10 feet tall, carrying her tray carefully to avoid collisions. They found a table in the corner, and Nessa had just taken her first bite when the station's alert system began wailing. Red emergency lights strobed across the cafeteria, and the crowd surged toward the exits in panic. "Gravity failure in Docking Bay 3, the automated voice announced. "All personnel evacuate the area." Gravity failure in. The announcement cut off as the station shuddered. Nessa grabbed the table edge, her heart hammering. Gravity failures were catastrophic. Ships could break free from their moorings. Cargo could become projectiles. People could be killed. "We need to get to the shelters," Mira said, pulling at Nessa's arm. But Nessa was staring at her datapad, at the readings from Sector 7 that she'd been tracking all morning. The gravity fluctuations, the pattern it was spreading. And if it reached the main reactor level... "I have to get to operations," Nessa said, pulling away from Mira. "Are you insane?" "There's an emergency, which I might be able to stop." Nessa was already moving, fighting against the tide of fleeing bodies. She was small enough to slip between the panicking crowd, but that advantage disappeared when she reached the main corridor to operations. A solid wall of bodies blocked her path. "Move!" she shouted, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Frustration burned in her chest, hot and urgent. People were going to die if the gravity failure cascaded. She could see the solution in her mind, knew exactly what commands needed to be entered. But she couldn't reach the operations center. "Please," she whispered. And something strange happened. The words left her mouth with a force she'd never felt before, and the air around her seemed to shimmer. She felt a pulling sensation in her chest, like invisible threads connecting her to something vast and fundamental. The corridor's gravity plating responded, not failing, but bending to something she couldn't name. Around her, people suddenly found their feet skidding sideways, creating a clear path directly to the operations center doors. Nessa stumbled forward, confused and frightened by what had just happened, but driven by urgency. She burst into operations to find it, abandoned except for emergency protocols running on automated systems. Her fingers flew across the main console, tracking the gravity failure's spread. It was worse than she'd thought. The cascade had begun, and within minutes, half the station would be affected. There had to be a way to stop it, to reverse the cascade. Nessa pulled up the gravity grid's architecture, searching for a solution her supervisor and his team had apparently missed before evacuating. Then she saw it. A feedback loop in the system. A way to use the failure itself to reboot the entire grid. But it required manual calibration of 17 different nodes simultaneously, an impossible task for one person, especially one who couldn't even reach all the control panels. "Come on. Think," she muttered to herself, staring at the layout. The pulling sensation in her chest intensified, and she realized with shock that she could feel the gravity systems, sense their distress like a discordant song only she could hear, without consciously deciding to. Nessa reached out, not with her hands, but with that strange awareness. She touched the gravity nodes through nothing but intention and will, feeling them respond to her presence like instruments waiting to be played. "Stabilize," she whispered, and meant it with everything in her being. The station groaned around her. Displays flickered. And then, one by one, the gravity systems began responding to her commands, not through the console, but through that inexplicable connection she'd formed. She guided each node back into harmony, feeling the cascade reverse. Stability returning like a tide flowing back to shore. When the emergency lights finally went dark and normal, operations resumed. Nessa found herself on her knees beside the console, shaking with exhaustion and confusion. What had she just done? How had she done it? The operations center door hissed open. "Holy hell," a deep voice said. "Did you just save this entire station?" Nessa looked up to find a human man staring at her with undisguised amazement. He was tall by her standards, nearly 6 feet, with dark curly hair and warm, brown eyes that held none of the usual dismissiveness she encountered. His flight suit marked him as a cargo hauler, probably stuck on the station during the emergency. I don't know what I did," Nessa admitted, her voice shaky. The man crossed the room in 3 long strides and crouched down to her level. concern evident in his expression. "Are you all right? You look like you're about to pass out." "I'm fine. Just tired." But even as she said it, Nessa felt the room tilting. The man's strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. "Easy there. I'm Marcus, by the way. Marcus Webb." His smile was kind, treating her like a person rather than an inconvenience. "And you just did something impossible." I was watching the system displays from Docking Bay 2, saw the whole grid respond to something that definitely wasn't standard protocols. "You understand gravity systems?" Nessa asked, surprised. "Enough to know when they're doing something they're not supposed to." Marcus helped her into a chair. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but station security is going to have questions. Lots of them. And I've got a feeling you might not want to answer them." Nessa's blood ran cold. He was right. If authorities discovered she'd somehow manipulated the station's gravity systems through sheer will, they'd never let her go. She'd become a test subject, a curiosity to be studied and exploited. Why would? "You help me?" she asked, studying Marcus's face for signs of deception. His expression softened. "Because I watched everyone evacuate operations and leave you to face this alone. Because you're clearly terrified and exhausted. And because—" He paused, then smiled. "Humans have a soft spot for the underestimated. We've been there ourselves." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed in the corridor security teams, no doubt, coming to secure operations. Marcus stood quickly, offering his hand. "My ship's in Bay 2, if you want to get out of here before they start asking questions you can't answer. Come with me. Right now." Nessa stared at his outstretched hand, her mind racing. Stay and face interrogation about abilities she didn't understand, or trust a stranger who'd shown her more respect in 5 minutes than most people showed her in a month. The footsteps grew louder. She took his hand. Marcus pulled her to her feet and led her to a maintenance access panel. "This way. And stay close. I'm not losing you in the service corridors." As they disappeared into the station's hidden passages, Nessa couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just pivoted in a direction she'd never imagined. Behind them, security teams flooded into operations, searching for the miracle worker who'd saved Meridian Station. They would find only empty chairs and lingering questions, while somewhere in the depths of the station, a small woman with impossible abilities ran toward an uncertain future beside a human who'd seen her when everyone else looked away. Marcus's cargo ship, the Wandering Star, was exactly what Nessa expected from an independent hauler compact, well-worn and clearly loved despite its age. He guided her through the service corridors with practiced efficiency, his hand never leaving her elbow as they navigated the maze of maintenance tubes and access shafts. "Here," he said, boosting her up through a vertical shaft that would have been impossible for her to climb alone. His hands were steady and respectful, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Just another 50 meters, and we'll be at the docking level." Nessa's heart hammered against her ribs. Behind them, she could hear security teams spreading through the station, their cum chatter echoing through the metal walls. They were looking for her specifically now. Someone had pulled the security. Footage from operations, seen her there alone when the system stabilized. "They know it was me," she whispered as Marcus pulled himself up beside her. "Then we'd better move faster." He flashed her a reassuring smile that somehow made her feel less terrified. "Come on, little hero. My ship's waiting." The nickname should have stung another reference to her size, but for Marcus it sounded almost affectionate. They emerged into a service bay adjacent to the main docking area, and Nessa got her first glimpse of the Wandering Star through a viewport. The ship was a Talon-class freighter, maybe 40 years old, with the kind of modifications that spoke of a pilot who actually understood his vessel. The hull showed signs of countless repairs, but the engine housing gleamed with recent maintenance. "She's beautiful," Nessa said without thinking. Marcus's expression lit up. You mean that? Most people just see an aging rust bucket. Most people don't look closely enough. Nessa studied the ship's lines, noting the efficiency of its design. Your gravitational stabilizers are custom, aren't they? That's not standard Talon configuration. You know your ships. Marcus sounded impressed. I installed those myself 3 years ago. Makes the ride smoother in rough space. He checked his wrist display. We've got maybe 5 minutes before they lock down the docking bays. Ready to run? Nessa nodded, though she wasn't sure she was ready for any of this. They sprinted across the open space between the service bay and Marcus's docking berth. Nessa's shorter legs meant she had to work twice as hard to keep up, but Marcus matched his pace to hers without making her feel like a burden. When they reached the Wandering Star's boarding ramp, he practically lifted her up the steps. The ship's interior was cramped, but clean, every surface showing the kind of care that came from someone who lived in their workspace. Marcus guided her to the cockpit, a space barely large enough for 2 seats and the control consoles. Strap in, he said, sliding into the pilot's seat and beginning pre-flight sequences with the fluid motions of long practice. This might get rough. Nessa fumbled with the harness, designed for someone much larger, until Marcus reached over and adjusted it for her with quick, efficient movements. His fingers brushed her shoulder, and she felt that same strange pull in her chest, though different from what she'd experienced with the gravity systems. This was warmer, more personal. Meridian Control. This is Wandering Star requesting immediate departure clearance. Marcus said into his comm, his voice professionally calm. Negative, Wandering Star. All departures are on hold pending security sweep. Marcus's jaw tightened. He glanced at Nessa, then back at his controls. Control, I've got a medical emergency aboard. Need to get my passenger to the colony clinic at Vesper Station. She's having a severe allergic reaction to... All ships are grounded, Wandering Star. No exceptions. Well, Marcus said, his hands moving over the controls. I tried asking nicely. He looked at Nessa with an apologetic smile. Hold on to something. The ship's engines roared to life with a force that pressed Nessa back into her seat. Warning alarms screamed from the docking bay as Marcus lifted the Wandering Star without clearance, the ship bucking and weaving through the station's traffic control grid. Wandering Star, stand down immediately. You are in violation of... Marcus cut the comm channel. Sorry, terrible reception out here. He threw the ship into a tight spiral that made Nessa's stomach lurch. Through the viewport, she could see security vessels scrambling to intercept them. Can you outrun them? She asked, gripping her harness. Outrun? Maybe not. Marcus's grin was wild and reckless. But I can definitely outfly them. These station jockeys spend all their time in simulators. I've been threading asteroid fields since I was 16. He proved his point by diving the Wandering Star into the dense shipping lanes surrounding Meridian, using commercial haulers and passenger liners as cover. The security vessels tried to follow, but Marcus anticipated their every move, staying just ahead of their targeting systems. There! Nessa pointed to a massive colony ship pulling away from the station. If we can match their trajectory, they'll mask our engine signature. Marcus's eyes sparkled with admiration. Smart thinking. He brought the Wandering Star alongside the colony ship, using its bulk to shield them from the security vessel's sensors. You've done this before? No, but I understand systems. Everything has patterns. Nessa watched the sensor displays, her mind automatically tracking the pursuing ship's search grids. They're spreading out to cover more area. We'll need to break away soon, before they extend their net far enough to catch us anyway. Marcus studied her for a moment, something shifting in his expression. Who are you, Nessa Thorne? Really? I'm nobody. Just a systems analyst who... Nobody doesn't save an entire station from catastrophic failure. His voice was gentle but firm. Nobody doesn't manipulate gravity systems with their mind. And nobody definitely doesn't read tactical situations like a combat veteran. Nessa felt tears prickling at her eyes. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I did back there. All my life I've just been invisible, too small, too quiet, too Tellurian. And now suddenly I'm seen, Marcus finished softly. You're finally being seen, and it's terrifying. The understanding in his voice nearly broke her. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You're risking your ship, your life. Because when I was 19, I got caught up in something I didn't understand either. Marcus's expression grew distant. A corporate espionage thing, wrong place, wrong time. I was looking at 20 years in a detention facility for something I didn't do. A stranger helped me escape, told me someday I'd have a chance to pay it forward. He looked at her, really looked at her, with those warm brown eyes. Today's that day. The colony ship began its jump sequence, preparing to enter faster than light travel. Marcus pulled the wandering star away, using the energy discharge from the larger ship's engines to mask their own departure vector. Where are we going? Nessa asked as Meridian Station shrank behind them. Outer colonies. I've got a delivery scheduled at Granite Station asteroid mining operation, way off the main routes. We can lay low there while we figure out what's going on with your abilities. Marcus set the autopilot and turned to face her fully. But first, you should rest. You look exhausted. Nessa realized he was right. The adrenaline that had carried her through the escape was fading, leaving her trembling and drained. I don't think I can sleep. Then let me show you something. Marcus unbuckled and offered his hand. She took it, noticing how his larger hand completely enveloped hers, and let him guide her through the ship's narrow corridor to a small observation bubble, a transparent dome barely large enough for two people to sit in. This is my favorite place on the ship, Marcus said, settling down with his back against the curved wall. He patted the space beside him. Come on, you'll want to see this. Nessa squeezed in beside him, acutely aware of how close they were in the cramped space. His warmth radiated against her side, solid and reassuring. The view outside was breathtaking, stars streaking past as they traveled between planets, the black canvas of space dotted with distant nebulae. I come here when everything feels too heavy, Marcus said quietly. Reminds me how big the universe is, how many possibilities exist out there. Whatever's chasing you, whatever you're running from, it's just a small part of an infinite expanse. Nessa leaned against him without thinking, her head finding the curve of his shoulder as if it belonged there. Thank you for seeing me, for not treating me like a child or a problem. You're neither of those things. Marcus's arm settled around her shoulders, tentative at first, then more confident when she didn't pull away. You're incredible. Brave, brilliant, and apparently capable of impossible things. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Nessa felt that strange pulling sensation in her chest again, and this time she recognized it for what it was, the same force that had let her touch the gravity systems. It was like she could sense the gravitational fields around them, feel the way the wandering star moved through space, riding the invisible currents of mass and energy. Marcus, she said softly, what if I'm dangerous? What if I can't control whatever this is? Then we'll figure it out together. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. You don't have to face this alone. The simple promise made something tight in Nessa's chest loosen. All her life, she'd been alone in crowds, invisible among those who should have seen her. But here, in a tiny observation bubble aboard a fleeing cargo ship, she felt more seen than ever before. Tell me about yourself, she said, tilting her head to look up at him. Fair trade, you know my secret. What's yours? Marcus smiled, a little sad around the edges. I'm from Earth. Grew up in the agricultural territories. Helped my family run a farm until the drought wars made it impossible. Joined a cargo crew. When I was 16, worked my way up, eventually bought this ship with everything I'd saved. He paused. I've spent the last 10 years hauling cargo across the outer systems, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. Sounds lonely. It was, is. He met her eyes. Or it was until about 2 hours ago. Nessa's breath caught. The intensity in his gaze made her feel like she was falling, but not in a frightening way. Like gravity itself had shifted, pulling her toward this moment, this person. We barely know each other, she whispered. Yeah, Marcus's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. But I've got a feeling we're going to have time to fix that. The ship's navigation system chimed, indicating they'd be dropping out of faster-than-light travel soon. Marcus reluctantly pulled away, helping Nessa back to the cockpit. As they approached Granite Station, Nessa could see why Marcus had chosen it. The entire operation was built into a massive asteroid, with dozens of smaller rocks tethered around it like a protective shield. Perfect place to hide, Marcus said, guiding the ship toward a docking bay carved into the asteroid's surface. The miners here don't ask questions, and station security is more concerned with claim disputes than fugitives from Meridian. They docked without incident, though Nessa noticed Marcus kept his hand near the controls the entire time, ready to bolt if needed. The station's interior was rough-hewn rock reinforced with metal supports, all function and no aesthetic. Miners in heavy work suits trudged past, their faces weathered and tired. We'll need supplies, Marcus said, checking his credit balance. And information. I've got a contact here who might know something about what happened to you. They made their way through the station's main concourse, Nessa staying close to Marcus's side. She felt exposed without her work uniform, vulnerable in ways that had nothing to do with her size. Several miners gave them curious looks, but no one paid them much attention, just another hauler and his passenger. Marcus led her to a small establishment that barely qualified as a bar, its walls rough stone and its furniture clearly salvaged from decommissioned ships. Behind the counter stood a woman with silver-streaked hair and the kind of face that had seen everything twice. Marcus Webb, she said, her voice gravelly. Didn't expect to see you for another month. Change of plans, Riva. Marcus slid onto a bar stool, gesturing for Nessa to take the one beside him. The seat was too high for her, but Marcus subtly steadied her as she climbed up. Got caught up in some unexpected excitement. Riva's sharp eyes moved to Nessa, assessing. That so? And who's your friend? Someone who needs to disappear for a while. Marcus kept his tone casual, but Nessa heard the underlying seriousness. You heard anything strange coming out of Meridian? Any unusual bulletins? Riva poured them drinks, something amber, and probably alcoholic, while considering. Funny, you should ask. Got a priority alert about 2 hours ago. Station security looking for a Tellurian woman, wanted for questioning regarding a station emergency. Her gaze settled on Nessa. Didn't specify what kind of questioning. The kind that doesn't end well, Marcus said grimly. Thought so. Riva leaned against the counter. They're offering a substantial reward for information leading to her capture. Must want her pretty badly. Nessa felt ice settling in her stomach. How substantial? Enough to make even honest folks think twice. Riva studied her. What did you do, girl? Kill someone? I saved people, Nessa said quietly. The whole station, actually. And apparently, that made me valuable. Understanding dawned in Riva's weathered face. Ah, one of those situations. Corp interests involved? Probably, Marcus confirmed. Which is why we need to stay off the grid for a while. You know anyone who might have information about unusual abilities? Specifically related to gravity manipulation? Riva's eyebrows rose. That's an oddly specific question. She refilled their drinks, thinking. There's a guy independent researcher, used to work for the Tellurian Science Consortium before he got blacklisted for asking uncomfortable questions. Lives out in the Ashfield sector now, studies things the establishment doesn't want studied. Sounds perfect, Marcus said. How do we find him? His name's Jin Mercer. Human, like you. Runs a small research station on the edge of the Crimson Nebula. Riva pulled up a star chart on her terminal. Here, but Marcus, if you're taking her there, you need to know the consortium has corporate enforcers looking for people with rare abilities. If they track you down, we'll handle it, Marcus said with more confidence than Nessa felt. Riva looked between them, then sighed. You're good people, Marcus. Both of you, I can tell. So here's some free advice. Whatever's between you two, whatever's growing there, don't let it make you stupid. Feelings cloud judgment, and clouded judgment gets people killed out here. Nessa felt her cheeks flush, but Marcus just smiled. Noted. Thanks, Riva. They restocked the wandering star and prepared for the journey to the Crimson Nebula. As they worked side by side in the cargo hold, organizing supplies, Nessa found herself hyper-aware of every accidental touch, every shared glance. Riva's words echoed in her mind, whatever's between you two, and she couldn't deny there was something. Nessa? Marcus's voice pulled her from her thoughts. He was standing close, holding a storage crate, but making no move to put it down. Are you scared? She considered lying, then decided he deserved honesty. Terrified. Of what I can do, of what they'll do to me if they catch me of? She stopped, not quite brave enough to finish the thought. Of this? Marcus set down the crate and stepped closer, leaving barely any space between them. Of whatever's happening between us? We've known each other less than a day, Nessa said, but she didn't step back. Yeah. His hand came up to cup her cheek, gentle and reverent. And yet, I can't remember the last time I felt this certain about anything. When he kissed her, it was soft and questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Nessa found herself pressing closer instead, her hands fisting in his flight suit as she kissed him back with a hunger that surprised them both. He tasted like the amber drink from Riva's bar and something uniquely him warmth and safety and possibility. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. Still scared? More than ever, Nessa admitted. But not of this. Never of this. They finished loading supplies in comfortable silence, but everything had shifted. The air between them felt charged, full of unspoken promises and impossible hope. As the wandering star lifted off from Granite Station, heading toward the Crimson Nebula and whatever answers awaited them there. Nessa stood in the observation bubble and watched the asteroid field fall away behind them. Somewhere out there, people were hunting her, wanting to use her abilities for purposes she couldn't imagine. But for the first time in her life, she wasn't facing the universe alone. Marcus stood beside her, his hand finding hers in the darkness. And together, they flew toward an uncertain future that felt less terrifying with every passing moment. Whatever happens, Marcus said softly, we face it together. Deal? Nessa squeezed his hand, feeling that gravitational pull in her chest, the one that had nothing to do with physics and everything to do with the man standing beside her. Deal.